That I will call to order the August 15th College Township Council regular council meeting. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, so I would ask those who can stand to stand and join us on the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. That takes us to public open discussion. This would be the time of the meeting where anyone in the audience or in the online audience would like to address council on any items that are not on tonight's agenda. Because if they're on the agenda, you'll have an opportunity to address us at that time. Okay, looking first in the room. Anybody? Items that are not already on the agenda? Okay, how about online? Jen, we have at least?
Just one, and I,
Okay.
That's
So,
raise your hand if,
Yeah, please raise your digital hand if you'd like to address council on anything that's not already listed on tonight's agenda.
you're good.
Going once, going twice? Okay, that concludes public open discussion. That takes us to new agenda items. I'm looking to my fellow council members. Any requests to add anything to tonight's agenda that's not already on the agenda? No?
Nope.
Okay.
Not for me.
That concludes new agenda items, and that takes us to special presentation tonight. Special presentations tonight, we have one, SP1, the College Township Finance Report. This is not an action item. However, we are going to receive, I believe, a presentation from Kim. Is that correct?
That is
That's what that looks like up there?
That is what that is.
Kim's first presentation, first finance report.
For council, yes.
Great, thank you. Kim, the floor is yours.
You were provided a line item detailed report of the finances from January to June of this year. We'll go over the bank concentration account. There was a little over $515,000 of new money in the account for June. The state liquid fuels, $128,000. That's for approved projects for the state fund itself. The Coach Street Turnback account has a little over $875,000 in there, and that's to cover, it's a money market account to cover Pike Street, obviously. There are the two sinking funds, which are holding accounts. The $400 maintains the account so that we can use them as interest payments and principal payments are due. The American Rescue Plan, this was COVID money, essentially, that we designated as revenue replacement. And it can be used during shortfalls in cash or it's undesignated. So. The investment funds, the general fund, and this is undesignated money, has a little over $2 million in it. Interest rates right now are pretty good, so we're keeping the money in there. The other investment account for, these are designated investments and for projects and specific fund balance accounts. The overflow of state liquid fuels funds, we're allowed to invest that, and we invested a little over $633,000 in there. Currently, we do not have any CDs, but the account is available if we choose to use that. The collected property taxes are allocated monthly to each of the funds listed below. The fund balance on 1/1/24 was our beginning balance for the year. The current balances are as listed there for June. The assigned and restricted, the $734,000, that is for designated projects for this year, and restricted funds for specified items. Our most stable and reliable source of revenue is obviously our property tax collection. The prior year-to-date amounts are listed there, and the current year-to-dates. So far, the total cash collected for property taxes for June 24 is the $2,599,130. We had slightly like a 0.4% better collection rate this year than we did the prior year. Our non-property tax revenues, the Act 511 taxes, which would be property transfers, there's a little bit of historical data there. For the current year, it's $188,000. We've done really well on the earned income tax and the local service taxes. Obviously, there's a lot of people working in College Township this year. We do get a cost refund on the earned income tax. Last year's was $19,424. In 22 it was only $15,253, but it was only about a 0.1% increase in that difference with the amount gathered and the amount refunded. We've had a pretty windfall year on the PSU impact fees. As of June, it was $509,000. Well, a little over $509,000. And just a little funny here, we budgeted $120 for the chicken license fees, and we've actually received $287 this year, so it's a good year to be a chicken. Looking ahead, we've obviously already approved by resolution the 2025-2029 capital improvement program, and this is a valuable tool for budget development. And going into that, we will be doing budget development for 2025, hopefully getting those approved in November or December of this year. Unknown at this point, but definitely some revenue involved for the township is the casino development, which is planned for 2025 at the new mall. And if you want to go to the College Township website, you can get the financial information there, the capital improvement, any independent audits that you're looking for. There are opportunities for public service on the boards, authorities, and commissions here at the township. You can also get the latest township news and events on the homepage, and you can also sign up for notifications for road closures or anything like that that's happening in the township. Were there any questions?
Sure, let's go to staff first. Anything to add beyond what we see in the presentation?
Only thing I would note, obviously this is Kim's first go-around wearing the interim finance director hat. It was a good opportunity for her to come in and talk to council a little bit about where we stand financially. Much like her predecessor, Bob, we continue to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. As you can see, we're in a good, stable position right now at mid-year and gearing up for budget season, which will probably start in earnest here in the next month.
It means more meetings.
That's right.
Anything else then from staff? Rich, questions, comments? It's not an action item, but...
No, I like all the trends I'm seeing. Hopefully we can continue those through the end of the year.
Susan?
No questions.
I
Thank you,
got
Kim.
First, I appreciate the color. I've been sitting here for many, many years looking at black and white finance reports, and this is the first year I've seen color in a finance report. So, the chicken fee, was there a reason we singled that one out? I mean, we collect a lot of fees for a lot of things, but
There wasn't a whole lot that happened in the other revenue portion this year, other than the things that I highlighted. I felt that that was something to break up the whole finance thing, you know, people
yeah.
sometimes glaze over when you read through those things, so,
Yeah, especially when they're black and white.
yeah.
So, yeah, and it did give you the opportunity to interject some humor in the finance report, which is
Yes.
something we didn't normally get,
Yes,
so.
trying to keep everybody engaged.
Yeah. Did you have anything else, Mike?
One thing I did want to note, and Kim highlighted it, but this obviously has been a pretty good year for us in terms of the Penn State impact fee. You know, that's going to be an area that looks pretty nice at the end of the year based on what we've seen to date, plus the number of concerts and stuff at the Jordan Center still to come. So, you know, right now we're in a good position trending towards having a pretty good bottom line at the end of this fiscal year. So.
Okay, so that's how you would characterize, succinctly characterize our financial position then?
Right.
Okay, last chance for comments, questions? All right, thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Like I said, it's not an action item, so we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is reports. First item under reports tonight is the manager's update. Mike, do you have anything to add beyond what's in there?
Just wanted to highlight a couple things here just briefly. Solar power purchasing agreement, I know we've been kind of in a holding pattern with that one. We do have a working group scheduled here for towards the end of the month. It's right now the anticipation that we're going to see contracts as well as where we stand in terms of legal charges to date. So that'll be an interesting meeting just to hopefully be able to start moving ahead with some positioning. The other one that I would highlight, Kim mentioned about the casino. I did want to note, obviously we talked at the last meeting about the Supreme Court ruling. There was an appeals process or time period that was availed to Stadium Gaming for their opportunity to appeal the decision. As far as we know, there were no appeals issued prior to that deadline. Beyond that, nothing else to report.
Okay, questions for the manager. Rich?
None.
Susan?
None.
None for me. You're getting off easy tonight, Mike.
I'll take it.
That concludes the manager's report, and that takes us to COG Regional, County, and Liaison reports. Dustin is not here. The only meeting that I had between the last meeting and tonight was our facilities meeting, but I had to leave after the first agenda item, so I don't have anything really to report, and it was an information update. It was not an action item. So Rich, has anything from Finance or Parks and Rec?
Finance met August 8th. I'm pleased to say it was the shortest meeting I've ever attended. We went over our general cleanup work items. The big items were the formulas for the annual budgeted municipal shares, trying to solidify what we're going to see in the detailed budget. The code administration vehicle purchase, a little bit out of order. It came to us before it came to public safety. We received the presentation and got an education piece from the code agency director to some of our members on how the enterprise funds work and whatnot. We ultimately recommended a budget amendment contingent on public safety's support. And that was it.
Okay. Questions for Rich on the finance report? All right, Susan, we did get your What did we get today? Which one was that?
COG Public Safety.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did the other two, LTAC and Industrial Development, didn't meet?
You're right, LTAC isn't meeting right now, and Industrial Development will meet next week.
Okay.
We meet next
Since
week.
the report just came in today, feel free to,
I think the only thing is to tag on to what Rich said about the budget amendment. So we had a robust discussion, and in the end, the motion was amended to remove the specific brand of vehicle, the Ford Escape. There were concerns from some of the committee members on the quality of the vehicles. So we had a discussion about CoStar's purchasing versus, sending that out to bid. And we also discussed that the order had been changed, that Finance had already approved the motion 5-1 to accept the budget amendment. So ultimately, that did pass by a vote of 5-0, but the motion was actually amended, so the language is a little bit different. And then we got back a report from Code. Tiffany Baker sat in for Walt this week, and there are 2 new student housing buildings in downtown State College that are now being occupied, one on Hetzel Street and Pugh Street. Students are moving in, and Code is working on occupancy for the Nittany Lion Inn. So those were the 3 big projects that were pointed out to us. And then the rest of it is in the report.
questions?
No questions.
I didn't have a chance to read the report. Is the Escape the one that's the CoStar, is in CoStars? So by going out for bid, you could end up with an Escape, but you could end up with something other than that.
Right, and I think some of the newer members on the committee didn't understand how the CoStars program works and why the decisions were made. So, we had a discussion about the history of how we got to the decision, and that was very helpful and instructive because most of the committee members right now are new. And additionally, Mr. Snyder was not able to attend the meeting, so Ms. Baker sat in for him, and she was very helpful, but I think some of the details got lost, so some of us were able to bring that back.
Just for the record, CoStars is an acronym, I think, for the state contract. We're buying things off the state contract. So, yeah, I guess that, calling it CoStar sometimes can be confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in our discussion, I'll just, because Dr. Snyder was in our meeting, one of the big issues has been availability of the hybrid, the plug-in hybrid vehicles and everything. And he's created a relationship with a company that is under CoStars and is able and willing to sell the car or the vehicles under that. The bigger discussion that we had was regarding there's a pickup truck being considered, and it's after discussion with the sustainability planner and everything, they're not looking for an electric vehicle for that. They're going with a standard combustion engine for that vehicle because the pricing is just pricing and availability is just doesn't make it worth it to do that, even in support of our sustainability goals. So that's where the bigger piece of the budget amendment is in that truck.
Well, and the other piece that was brought up, that the timing was important, both in terms of the cost of going back out to find another vehicle, and also those 4 positions, the fire and life safety positions that are shared between code and fire services, they may well be hired within a few months, and there would not be a vehicle available for them to use if the Escape hadn't been, if we hadn't approved the purchase. So that is done.
Okay.
The alibi, you had mentioned about parks governance. Parks governance, the July meeting was canceled. It appears there is a desire to wait until the new COG executive director is in place to continue on with that mission.
Okay. Well, that would conclude COG regional reports. Absent any county and liaison reports, which I don't believe we have, that will take us to staff, PC, and other committee reports. Let's start with PC. I see we have our PC rep here.
Okay, last Tuesday's meeting, We heard the Mount Nittany Manor sketch plan. We actually worked quite a long time on the attainable housing. I think back in like November, our focus was maybe a little bit heavy on being equitable. And with the input from council and from the community, we've also brought into focus that we just need more units. And thirdly, I think with some guardrails that we can put in place, we can put those two things together. We spent some time on form-based code, and this is just my personal experience. My career in retail, I look at it as DPZ is sort of marketing themselves to us a little bit. Like, we had a discussion, one of the things is they wanted robust streets. And I jokingly said, let's name a street robust or something like that. But just keep in mind that they are marketing themselves to us with the thought in mind that what they say to us and what they use us, that'll be for their next client and their next client, stuff like that. And then, of course, to sort of say what we're looking at PC, comedian Henny Youngman said, "Who says nothing is impossible? I've been doing nothing for years." And the second one, Pat Paulson ran for president back in 1972. He said, "As I've always said, the future lies ahead." Thank you. Oh, any questions?
Yeah, wait a minute, yeah, you're not getting away that easy. Any questions for our PC rep?
No, I watched your meeting, so thank you.
Yeah, I didn't. Rich, did you?
I did not have the opportunity.
Okay. Did Planning Commission take action to make a recommendation on the Mount Nittany plan?
No, because they're going to come back with, that wasn't the.
Oh, that was the sketch. I'm sorry.
Sketch plan, yeah.
I'm sorry, that was the sketch, yes. Okay. And honestly, you could say that about any consultant you hire on any subject. So, I mean, they all want to do business after they work with you. So.
I mean, I was going to use the example, Susan and I, with our medical experience, there was a couple diabetic drugs that were invented years back, and I don't think they realized that there was weight loss was going to be a side effect.
That's right.
And you turn the TV on now, and you see slightly chubby people out there dancing in the streets, or you see, people walking down the street and people joining them, and there's even one where there's a doctor with a stethoscope or medical person, and they got a little bit of a pot belly, so it's like, so it's all marketing, yeah, we're surrounded by marketing.
Yeah.
Definitely in healthcare.
All right, well, thanks. Dave, we got a written report from you, but since you're here tonight, I came in late, so I'm not sure we've really had a chance to read it or digest it, so we would welcome.
Yeah, I can give you the Reader's Digest version. Good evening.
Dave Schulte, Park and Rec.
Indeed, thank you.
Still.
Okay. On Monday night we met and we did see the sketch plan for Mount Nittany Manor. Pratt from Keller Engineering gave a presentation, and it was admitted that the plan fails to meet ordinance 180-26. It's obvious that it doesn't meet it in 180-26D3, which is the shape and slope requirements for it. But we also discussed accesses, and minimum widths for both the accesses and the park itself. Now, an access would be getting to the parkland from a thoroughfare, okay? And then if you've got a trail or a linear park of some sort, that's under a different section of the ordinance, that has a different minimum width, okay? We talked about various mitigating actions for this. That'd be providing another access to make it more of a trail-ish type of thing. Like there's a stormwater access, check that stormwater easement that comes from Matilda on up, okay, into the big stormwater. And then there's 2 residential lots, and then there's the proposed parkland. And actually, Brett suggested, well, maybe we could create an access or add a section across the back of those 2 lots, and then you connected the two large pieces with Matilda through the stormwater, behind the lots, into what he was proposing as a park, and then out onto J Lane, okay? And then you've got kind of a theoretical possibility backing situation. So that was one of the things that was talked about. Reshaping the parcel was talked about. Did talk about expanding Mount Nittany Terrace Park, which is nearby, as an option. Pratt? mentioned that the slopes there make it kind of problematic, okay? And, but I think the slope of that park that would be added is kind of similar to the slope of the Melanie Terrace Park at that end anyway. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We talked about possibly installing, how many phrases this right? The way that that is all situated, it's kind of prone to encroachment from the various areas, and the way that we mitigate that is like a fence around it. Okay, would be a factor for that. And we did talk about potential uses of the depicted parcel, which I know that was kept coming up, came up at Planning Commission, and it came up here, like, what do you see this being? And different things were talked about, and including something similar to the Harvest Fields Trails Park over in Oldsburg. The committee has no interest in a fee in lieu, okay? We're adding 49, I think, new families with this development, and that would indicate a need for some more physical space for recreational activities rather than adding on to what we already have, rather than improve this. The Terrace Park is pretty well developed at this point. So that's that. As Brad indicated that one or more alternatives would be presented at a later date. Next subject, we did see a presentation on the proposed play equipment at Fieldstone Park. Okay. Thank you to Amy and Ms. Salzer for making the presentation. Also present at that was a gentleman from Compan, the manufacturer of their equipment they've selected. It looks like a design appropriate for preschool age children. There are 2 4 to 5 foot slides, couple of swings, and a lot of inclusiveness features. A sample of what that manufacturer has done. I was not familiar with that manufacturer's equipment. There is one locally in Oakwood Park in Patton Township. I intend to run out there and take a look at that. Mr. Bull indicated the material lead time is 9 to 11 weeks, and Ms. Kurt, I think you said it would be around 40K?
Roughly, yes.
Okay. And we also had a notification about an encroaching structure in the park, and we're following that to find out how that sorts out. Questions?
Let's start with Susan.
No questions? Thank you.
Rich?
No, very thorough, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple, Dave. Going back to Mount Nittany, then in general, I mean, you were here for the first sketch plan, then you saw the revised sketch plan at Park and Rec, right? You were here the night they showed which showed the parkland being an extension of Mount Nittany, current Mount Nittany Terrace Park.
No,
It was a council meeting.
I don't remember that as being,
Okay.
they were being discussed
Yes.
by council. I didn't remember that as being part of it. Okay.
And then by the time it made it to Park and Rec, you saw the second version of the sketch plan, which instead shifted the parkland to the existing wooded area at the end of J Lane. So that's what you're commenting on tonight, right? Is that?
Correct.
So in general, would you say, because council was very interested in when they came back with that alternative park option, this council was very interested in what Park and Rec thought of that versus extending Mount Nittany Park in the area where there was a slope. So what was the consensus?
There was no consensus as to one being better than the other, okay? In fact, we had one individual suggest, well, can we do both? Well, obviously, yes, that would be great. Let's do both. Okay. Whether the developer is willing to do that, okay, in terms of dedicating land at both ends, well, I think they're going to say, no, we're only going to dedicate 2 to 2.5 acres because that's what we have to do.
Okay. So to be clear then, either one of those options would meet the requirement and not require additional fee in lieu to meet the ordinance.
The current configuration that was showed to us does not meet the ordinance.
Okay, so there would be fee in lieu needed on top of that.
Or they need to change, there's different other things they can do. They can change the shape of what they're suggesting, okay, so that it would meet the ordinance.
Okay, so Park and Rec's preference, if I understand correctly, is to reconfigure the parkland in some manner that all of the required parkland is included on the
Yes.
site and does
Yes.
not require fee and lieu to meet?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That's what we were
That's
kind
a
of,
major takeaway, because that's a definite.
okay. We were interested in what Park and Rec thought about that, because we were going to have to be the ones to ultimately decide on that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And so we were interested in, after getting input from Parks and Rec, okay, we were interested in what the developer, or what the developer comes back with as, okay, well, okay, will you accept this alternative?
Did you have anything else to add?
Well, a little bit, only I do know that some of the discussion we had around the table, both, of course, Mount Nittany Terrace Park already exists, is next door. It was noted that Mountainside is also within that close proximity. So although it wasn't actually said, we should consider fee and lieu, I think it was kind of implied that we already have two really nice parks. Is that maybe better that we should be improving those? And no consensus was made overall, but it was discussed.
Improving those with fee and lieu?
With fee and lieu, yes.
Okay, so
yes.
because of the proximity of other
Right.
parks, we could conceivably justify some amount of fee and lieu?
I guess, again, I'm not sure. I just know that it was discussed. It was discussed.
It was discussed, you specifically asked that, and the consensus was that we're not interested in.
Okay,
I
so-
beg to differ.
It
All
will
right,
come back
well,
to
we,
Yeah, it comes back as a
yeah,
preliminary.
but
and so
it'll
it's-
come back now with we will have some
Right, something to.
read on what Park and Rec thinks and staff thinks about the options. So we're in a better position now, I think, to evaluate the options and act on them. All right, if there's nothing else, Mike, did you have anything to add?
No, I was just gonna add in particular, Michael Pratt also got feedback out of Parks, which, that'll inform what he ultimately brings back in terms of a preliminary final. So that's really kind of the next step in the process.
So we anticipate seeing a preliminary final, not another sketch.
At this point, that's the expectation. Last we've heard is potentially as early as next week, there may be a submission.
Okay.
And we don't intend to see it in council until the first meeting in October. It'll go to Park and Rec again, then Planning Commission, and then it will come to us tentatively October 5th, I think.
Okay, so both Park and Rec
Yes.
and PC, well, it will have to go to PC, I suppose.
Well,
wouldn't have
Parks
to.
first, and then it will go to PC, I believe, on the second Tuesday, the second meeting in September. And then she had me place it on the October
Okay.
agenda.
So we'll have a recommendation
Yeah.
from both.
Yeah, assuming the submission happens based on what we've heard.
Right.
That's kind of the sequence that works out just based on the calendar.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks, Dave. That would conclude our other committee reports, unless I'm missing any. Am I missing any? Any other committees? No? Okay. Then that would take us to our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging report. Mike, what does that sound like?
Just a few things to note. A couple dates coming up. August 26th is Women's Equality Day. That is a acknowledgement of the 19th Amendment, designating the right to vote. And August 31st is International Day of People of African Descent. And the last thing I'd note in your consent agenda is a resolution aiming towards September, R2425, recognizing September as Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month.
Okay, this is not an action item, but we routinely open the floor to public comment on this particular item. So I would look first to the room. Anybody like to address council on this subject? And then to our online participants, anyone like to address council on our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging report?
No, not what I see.
Not seeing any digital hands raised. With that, that will conclude reports, and that will take us to our consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes one set of minutes. CA1 includes one set of minutes, August 1st, 2024 regular council meeting minutes. CA2, correspondence, includes 8 items. The first one is a letter from Mid-State Literacy Council dated July 24, 2024 regarding appreciation for sponsoring the Community Spelling Bee. The second item is an email from Daniel Materna dated July 30th, 2024 regarding casino. The third item is an email from Andrew Schaefer dated August 1st, 2024 regarding questions about the Nittany Mall Casino project. The fourth item is a letter from the ELA Group dated August 5th, 2024 regarding the time extension for Mount Nittany Elementary School to December 3rd, 2024. The fifth item is an email from Center County Planning Office dated August 7th, 2024 regarding the 2024 mosquito West Nile virus positive sample. That would be here in College Township. The sixth item is a press release from CATA dated August 7th, 2024 regarding the Penn State Game Day shuttles. The seventh item is an invitation from the Center LGBTA themed fundraiser. And the last item is an email from Daniel Materna dated August 7th regarding the casino. And then we also have three items under CA3, which are all action items, which will be accepted and approved upon receiving of the consent agenda tonight. The first is Resolution R-24-25, the one Mike referred to, which designates September as Suicide Prevention Month. The second item is the appointment of Mrs. Jane Reck as the College Township representative on the School Library Board of Trustees for a term through December 31st, 2024. And the last item is a contract 24-12 Nittany Mall sinkhole awarded to HRI Incorporated, the low bidder, in the amount of $153,490. Would any members like to pull for discussion any of these consent agenda items before I consider action?
None tonight.
Susan?
None
Rich?
tonight.
All right, I would like to pull CA3C, the contract 24-12 Nittany Mall sinkhole awarded to HRI low bidder, amount of $153,490. Anything else? Anything that staff would encourage us to pull for discussion? All right, so minus CA3C, the contract I just referenced, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
So seconded.
Okay. Any discussion on any of the consent agenda items before we take a vote? All right, seeing none, all in favor of accepting the council consent agenda minus CA3C as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. CA3C, I should note that Mr. Mark Legowski, is that correct?
That is correct.
Mark is sitting in here tonight for our Township Solicitor Louis Glantz in the event that council members had any questions on this particular consent agenda item. And I think before I'm going to open it up to questions, I'm going to ask maybe Mark or Jerry, one of you, to kind of brief us on, give us the latest and greatest. I know it's been a bit of a evolving and moving process through the week.
So I'll kind of lead off, and Jerry and I will probably tag team this one a little bit, just to provide some context as to what's happening under this item. So you recall, I believe 1 or 2 meetings ago, we had a contract for a geotech firm to come in and look at the sinkhole at the Nittany Mall. So this is an end result of a sinkhole that opened up in November, Jerry? December. Initially, NAMDAR had worked on that project and was moving ahead in terms of doing what they are required to do to mitigate the problems with that sinkhole. They stopped work on that in April, and since that time, the township has tried multiple times to re-engage them in this process to no avail. At this point, it kind of left us with no alternative but to start that process with the intent of the township will ultimately fix it and bill it back to the property owner. Jerry, if I'm out of turn on any of this stuff, please jump in. But so as I noted, we had already gone through and done a selection of a geotech. That work was completed. They provided a solution And this is a result of a issuance of an RFP for bids for the construction work that corresponds with fixing the sinkhole. So I'll turn it over to Jerry if he has any additions that he wants to add to that.
Nope, so far so good. In coordinating all of this previously with Adam, with Mike, and with Solicitor Glantz, we are following all of the municipal bidding procedures, all of the prevailing wage procedures, because as a municipality, those are our requirements. It's largely been, we have not heard any specifics from NAMDAR since issuing a notice of enforcement on May 13th. So at this time, if College Township wants to see this open hole and this safety hazard corrected, I believe that we're going to need to do this ourselves, through our own workforce, and then back bill through our legal processes to recover those funds.
Okay, questions for staff on that, Susan?
No, I read into this maybe too much without having it explained, but I assumed that's what was happening with this, that we had sent this out to bid, and now we have the contract, and that'll get fixed, and then we'll turn that back over to you. Thank you.
Rich?
Nope.
Okay. So
Comfortable.
just to be clear for anyone who's paying attention, we could do nothing and just keep pestering the property owner to try to fix it. But what we have done instead is, in the interest of public safety, we began a process to repair the sinkhole and what we call back bill the property owner. And is that the correct term? And the advice of our counsel is that's all legal, and we follow the correct procedure, and we have standing to enforce the billing of them to the point where we could actually place a lien on the property should they not pay. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, go ahead.
I will add, and Mark can comment, we also have fines within our ordinance for failure to correct. We have been filing with the magistrate and pursuing those options as well. And we have not received feedback, responses from NAMDAR. So at this point, we feel this is our next best step.
Well,
Okay.
not only have you filed them, we've received $24,000 in judgments, in 2 separate judgments. And the appeal period is not over for them, but it will be at the end of this month, and we have heard nothing from them at all. No counsel has reached out or said anything.
Okay, so based on their lack of any response, we're almost left with no choice. Should we desire to correct the safety issue?
That's exactly right, and the proximity to the road too, I would say that's definitely something that should be fixed sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Your ordinance, your stormwater ordinance, allows them a very short period of time to fix this, and they've exceeded that by plenty.
Okay. And to be fair, this is not unusual response behavior from this property owner. I can say that. You guys don't have to agree or not or anything, but my experience in this room over the years, this is quite consistent. So given that, I certainly would support the action.
And the only other thing I would add is ultimately, this is not our preferred path, but as you noted, at this point, we're kind of left with no recourse. There's a public safety issue there that needs addressed, and we'll do it if the property owner won't.
And they've been given a chance to respond.
And we continue to be sure that every step of this process, we are communicating clearly with them.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that. But certainly their recent behavior and past history has pretty much left us no choice.
Correct.
Okay. If there's no further questions, then the chair will accept the motion to accept item CA3C, the contract awarding the HRI the bid at $153,490 to address the situation.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. This was an action item. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to comment on that before we take a vote? Okay. All right. Motion carries unanimously. At this point, I would thank our solicitor, substitute solicitor
That's right.
tonight for sitting in. There's no requirement to attend the rest of the meeting, Mike, unless you
Correct.
think that's...
Yeah, we're gonna give Mark a reprieve and let him get out of here,
Yeah.
but I do appreciate you being
Yes.
here tonight to answer some
Yeah.
questions.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Take care.
No, Mark.
I was hopeful.
No, Mark.
Wrong Mark.
All right, that takes us to old business. Tonight, we have one item under old business, OB1, zoning changes in the industrial zone. This is a discussion item, not necessarily an action item, although I guess a remand would be an action item, wouldn't it?
Potential.
We decide to remand?
Yes.
So a potential action item. But before we consider any of that, it looks like we have a presentation queued up.
Yes, I have a presentation that coincides right along with the memo that you received in your agenda packet tonight. So this is regarding a new use in the general industrial zoning district. Back in July, council had heard a request from a realtor who was requesting indoor recreation facilities be a permitted use in the general industrial zoning district. So because of that request, council requested staff do an analysis of what that could look like, and so that follows here. Next slide, please. We currently have 2 general industrial zoning districts that total about 370 acres in the township. The first one you see at the top of the screen is the area near Dale Summit, or in Dale Summit, that goes pretty much from the transfer station over to the center concrete. The other location is the old cannery. So we do have 2 locations. Currently, the district's intent is to cluster industrial development in selected locations, provide sites for heavy industries separated from light industries and less intense uses, and to minimize the hazards and nuisances resulting from the operation of industries. If this use is to be permitted, it would be recommended that we update this intent statement to reflect the inclusion of the new use. Next slide, please. So a history. We went back to about 2011 and gathered some minutes from previous council meetings and pieced together this brief timeline. So from 2011, 2013, 2014, and 2015, the feeling from the minutes was that the answer to this request that was received on each of these occasions was really no. That it wasn't a use that was, it shouldn't be permitted, it wasn't consistent with the comp plan. Actually, there was a request to make the comp plan a little bit stronger on the end of industrial uses. Then council directed staff to do an analysis which found acreage and available buildings. I also want to note that in way prior to 2014, we do have an intermunicipal zoning agreement with Patton Township. Since we have a multi-municipal comprehensive plan, we have the ability to share uses across municipal boundaries. We currently share with Patton Township our industrial use, our industrial district, and we trade them for multifamily zoning. They don't have much industrial, we don't have much multifamily, so that's the trade-off there. And then when 2018 came around, things started to change, including a new request that included the request to add places of assembly. That brought on the forward plan, if you can remember back in 2018. That prompted the forward planning study, which analyzed the commercial and industrial zoning uses within the Dale Summit area, really township-wide, but it really concentrated there in the Dale Summit area. Bringing us to today, which we have the Dale Summit area plan underway, and at the most recent request, council directed staff to analyze including this use in the general industrial zoning district. So that's just a brief history of where we are and how we got here today. So in 2024, what would these changes look like? If this use were to be permitted, on the right here, you have the permitted uses table under the general industrial zoning district. We would have to add the use to this table to update it. Next slide, please. And currently, the definition of the indoor recreation facility use is a bit vague, so we would recommend updating that ordinance and keep in mind, or not ordinance, updating the definition, keeping in mind we can tailor that ordinance to sort of meet the needs and our willingness to add that use. Next slide, please. As for subdivision and land development ordinances, we don't have any current changes proposed to this. I'd like to note that all new land developments and subdivisions require the subdivision land development standards to apply, and that's for a new development. But in the case of a zoning change or a change of use permit or a zoning permit, those requirements under subdivision and land development do not apply. So then we get into recent plan recommendations. First, in 2018, the forward plan, they noted that these uses are in demand in 2018, and it could work in some of the underdeveloped spaces in the general industrial zoning district. And consistent with that, we have the Dale Summit Area Plan, next slide please, which included a market analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, and of course the vision. On the right there, we have a quote from the market analysis indicating that broadening the permitted uses under the general industrial zoning district will help in attracting new tenants who are interested in something different than the typical retail or office space. And that came straight from the market analysis. Next slide, please. Then we did the SWOT analysis during the updating of the Dale Summit Area Plan. Some of the strengths were there were multiple tenant opportunities. Weaknesses were noted that the regulations in place are currently inflexible. And some of the opportunities are the existing demand, and a threat was noted as the status quo if we just stay the same as we are currently. And then we get to the Dale Summit Area Plan vision. I won't read the entire thing to you, but I'd like to note in red on the right that Dale Summit is to become a place which through proactive planning and well-tailored regulations strikes a sound balance between encouraging business and industry expansion. We did put this, provide this analysis to DPZ, our planning consultant. They said they felt the use fit well within the effort, but they have yet to comment on the entire analysis because of some vacation scheduled. So I do anticipate hearing from them. That was their first impression. So then moving on, if this is remanded to the Planning Commission, then we would follow the typical process that we do, including Planning Commission's review and recommendation. This would be required to go to the Center Regional Planning Commission for review and recommendation. Of course, notice to Patton Township, because if we're changing our general industrial zoning district, we have to notify them. Council reviews, of course, the recommendation. Those recommendations sets a public hearing and then holds the public hearing to approve or deny the use. So just as an overview, it seemed like in the earlier years, indoor rec facilities in the general zoning district were not too desired, but later, from 2018 to the current day, it seems as though that use is becoming a little more desirable. Two more slides. So we have current planning trends. Of course, when we started updating the Dale Summit zoning, we talked about Euclidean zoning versus form-based zoning, and getting away from Euclidean zoning is really blurring those zoning lines that permits mixing of uses across zoning boundaries, which is modernizing the code. There's some adaptive reuse recommendations as well. And of course, some of these are the Dale Summit area goals. So finally, the staff recommendation, overall, we would just have to update the use table for the general industrial zoning district, update the intent, consider changing the definition. So those would be kind of the three major things that we would have to do for this undertaking. And staff feels that allowing for the opportunity for this interim zoning change to permit this use in the general industrial zoning district should be a welcome change. So with that, I look forward to some of your questions and comments.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Are you sure?
I think, yeah, I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure.
All right. Mike, did you have anything to add before we open it
No,
up?
I just tip my cap to staff. I feel like they did a good overview of what was here, and I appreciated the history, kind of give a reflection of where we've been, where we are, and where we're likely headed. So I'm really interested to hear what council has to say this evening.
We're both interested and anxious to. All right, who wants to start? Susan or Rich?
I'll start.
All right.
You brought up a point in the past when we've had requests for a change in use in this area, that their lighting, things like the stormwater, landscaping, things like that, the SALDO standards were not met. And so the concern I had would be the increase in traffic for the different uses. I think the different uses make sense, and I think the transition to form-based code or hybrid form-based code over time, this is what we talked about with the PRD and the PRBD, that was a transition project that would get us closer to form-based code. But how do the safety issues around the roads back there, the lights, curbs? So if this is in an existing building, there would be no change. But if there were to be a building, and it doesn't sound like anybody's requesting to put a new building up, they're asking to use the existing buildings differently. So is that a concern?
Yeah, well, let's follow that up quickly before we move to the next question. Is there anything within the municipal planning code that would allow us the flexibility to put in, require, or partner, or whatever it takes, to address those issues, because they're real? And I will say, as Rich and I were involved in all those no's, you showed that timeline of no's, and, Rich is on a planning commission or council, and I was on council every time we said no. And that was the reason we said no, was because, it's an 8 to 5 district, and there are very few sidewalks, no street lights. It's 25 miles an hour speed limit that the trucks, delivery trucks and contractors speed up and down. It's not conducive to, big events late at night and weekends. That was why we were saying no, not because we didn't like places of worship or, what do we call those event centers?
Indoor recreation facility.
Yeah. So I guess the question is there anything, do we have anything in the municipal planning code, any tools that would allow us to have our cake and eat it too out there?
Right, so I can say that back when we were updating the walkable College Township plan, we were considering how we can get more sidewalks in the township. We talked about having a change of use prompt the requirement for sidewalks. That didn't take place in the plan. So currently, if it is just a change of use or a zoning permit, I don't believe there's anything in the MPC that can make us request those types of updates. For like a minor land development or minor alteration plan, those are pretty, kind of fly under the radar on a staff level.
We don't even see them.
No, those are all staff level reviews, because they're pretty basic. Everything is preliminary already approved, and we have a strict requirement of what a minor meets. So that could be an option to amend that. But then again, when we have a preliminary or a final land development plan or a subdivision, similar to what happened over at the VA, they had to come in and update and make those improvements to lighting, landscaping, sidewalks.
Just on that site?
Just on that site, yeah. So that's really what we're looking at currently, are just land developments or subdivision plans.
any follow-ups or any additional?
The only question I would ask is, in terms of increased traffic and the impact that that would have in terms of safety, is there any concern from staff?
The only thing I would say is the history of that area, when Secor was a 24/7 operation and Corning was a 24/7 operation with shift changes, there was very substantial traffic on those streets. So they handled it. Is it the ideal? No. And I guess the only thing I would say is with the land development process, like we've talked about the sidewalk to nowhere, it's only a sidewalk to nowhere.
Right.
Until we have multiple developments.
Right.
And like the Dale Summit area plan, as that area grows and expands, I could see land developments and buildings making substantial enough changes that it's not going to happen tomorrow, next week, next year, but I think if that area does start developing, we would see in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see more modernized and sidewalks, and you're going to get that infill.
Yeah, and I guess, again, I come back to the idea that I'm for a change in use in terms of, the spirit of change of use, particularly if it brings something that makes more activity possible. It's the safety piece that I'm concerned about, and the increase in traffic and just sort of the lack of signage, the lack of direction. And so, but I also wouldn't want to see piecemeal development, the sidewalk to nowhere. That's exactly it. So, it's a balance, and I throw that up for discussion with you as well, having the experience on PC, both of you.
Yeah, and I would offer then, before we move off of that, is there's nothing stopping the township from going in and putting sidewalks and streetlights in there. So if we felt strongly enough about that, that's one way you could address it. Because Mark's right, over time, those sidewalks will probably develop. But if the first thing that's in there is an event center that's 7 days a week with lots of traffic, and to be fair, Secor is on the one end, and a lot of that traffic was in and out, is it Decibel?
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't, down Caroline Industrial Drive so much. They had pretty direct access off of Decibel. And yeah, traffic on Decibel was heavy. But my concerns are more internal to the sites that are internal, because it's dark. There is nothing. You walk through there at night and there is nothing but darkness.
Oh, yes. And
people walk in the street too because they're...
I agree there's a need for a sidewalk. You live in that area, and I'm amazed during the day how many people I see on their work breaks or lunch breaks. There are a lot of people walking. And there is limited sidewalks at this time.
Yeah, the staff of the VA clinic routinely walks up and down Struble and in there during their lunch break. You can see it. Was there anything else, Susan?
I think that's it for me.
Okay, Rich?
I think this provided good basis, the report showing the change in attitudes to a degree. One of the other things that we've always been conscious of is when we add uses to one zoning district, how does that potentially harm another zoning district that they had that use and that's where that development would have gone. We try to be conscious of that so that we're not picking winners and losers. The big things are the safety infrastructure we need to make sure that those are in place for those, so there needs to be guide rails to make sure and everything. I think I saw on the one, potentially conditional use as a concept, and I think that goes similar to what we were talking about Shiloh. We're in this interim phase of going between form-based and the really old code and everything, and so we're looking for a very hands-on process that we can try to make sure that the things that we're seeking to achieve in the form-based code get implemented in the interim and everything. So that was good. I was glad that you reached out to DPZ. I would want to hear a more thorough response on that, but that might be best to Planning Commission as opposed to Council and everything. The one thing, I guess because of the intermunicipal agreement and everything, I'm curious if perhaps we should shoot this across Patton's bow before we move forward. Just make sure if they have any strong objections to it, that, we don't get to the end and everything. And just one note, it's not a sidewalk to nowhere, it's a sidewalk with less traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
In closing. I think what I'm hearing is general support for remand with some points for consideration and thought included in the remand letter. Should Planning Commission find this, should they decide that this is something they could recommend to council, I think what we've heard so far is a couple of points or concerns that we would ask Planning Commission to think about as they're deliberating. What I heard was, and Rich brought up a really good point, and because we sat through that with the clinic. I think one, we would want to know, is there any realistic chance of these type of uses being built in any zoning districts within our township or within the center region for that matter, where that's already an allowed use? What we've heard from people who have asked is no. There's not enough space, or we've heard a lot of different reasons. So we would like to get confirmation on that, because what Rich noted is a very valid concern. By allowing that use, we're theoretically devaluing a property within the township that already has that as an allowed use. Could potentially be devaluing it. The second thing I heard was safety, and of course I share Susan's concerns. I'm in and out of there. I live 2 blocks away. It's not conducive right now to large groups in and out of there, evenings and weekends. And it sounds like it's fairly limited what we can do through redevelopment, unless we go the conditional use route, which would give us a little bit more. But maybe, just maybe, if the township wants this bad enough, we may have to step up. If we want to do those kinds of things and encourage that kind of development and diversity, maybe we just need to put our money where our mouth is and put in the infrastructure improvements that will make it safer.
Yeah. Make the investment.
Make the investment. We've talked about that before. And then thirdly, I really like Rich's suggestion about running this by Patton first. There's nothing that requires that we go to, that requires them in that order, right? I mean, we could send it to them right now, couldn't we?
Yes.
Just to get their initial thoughts?
Yes.
I mean, I think I'd want to wait till we send it remanded to the Planning Commission. Because I was around when we did this, when we were the first municipality in the state to take advantage of the option in the municipal planning code to share zoning districts. It's just good planning. So I think out of respect for that, if the process allows us to get with them first so they don't read about it in the paper or online, I guess, really. Hear from us first.
All right, got it.
Was there anything else?
What I would offer and it's in that vein, is I'll encourage Lindsay to reach out to Patton, to have that discussion. Should there be concerns, hesitations, those kind of things from Patton, then ultimately I think we come back to you with that discussion to continue to inform. If Patton is generally amenable to it, then we will work on crafting a remand letter. If that is council's direction here this evening, and we would follow the process that we typically follow with remand letters. We would craft it, we would put it before council for revisions and ultimately approval before it goes on to Planning Commission. So it's kind of a 2-step process. And again, it hinges, to your point, on where Patton falls on this, given our shared relationship.
Any objection to that, Rich or Susan?
No, I like it because, doing to others, if we have other stuff that they're involved with, we set the standard that we don't read about it online or something like that.
Yeah. This is not, it sounds like we're not going to take action tonight on this. However, having heard that discussion, despite the fact it's not an action item, is there anyone in the audience, having heard that discussion, who would like to offer any thoughts for further consideration as we deliberate this? Anyone? Okay. Mr. State College there?
Yep.
Yeah, and you'll have to identify yourself for America.
Sean Houts, I reside in College Township, and I guess I addressed the council and the township back in, I think, March, to talk about not our specific use, but I guess why we're looking at uses in the industrial district, and some of that has to do with like ceiling height and some things that just don't really work out, I guess, in the other zoning districts with, I guess, vacant office space and some of the other facilities that are available. I guess just to speak quickly to the need, I guess just speaking from like a youth perspective, there are definitely some underserved like youth communities in the State College area. I think we can acknowledge that there's a challenging, I guess, I don't know, governance situation sometimes when it comes to like how like youth facilities are taken care of and how they're served. And I guess the baseball community is one example of that. And I think it's in some ways led to people kind of branching out on their own. And I'm guilty and have kind of now participate in a travel team. So what I'm talking about is like where there's a youth organization that serves the whole community. Because of some of the challenges, I guess, with access to facilities, people have gone out on their own to create different organizations in smaller organizations that they can control. And as a result, these smaller organizations go and leverage smaller facilities, and they protect those facilities that they're not able to, because they have to, because they want to be able to use those facilities throughout the winter months and other times of year, and to be able to offer those to their kids. I guess the opportunity to open up zoning, I guess, for recreational uses in this district would allow, allow the whole community to be under one roof potentially with some of these like larger facilities, that meet the kind of height requirements for like ball sports or some other things. It would potentially serve as an opportunity to integrate the community and train together. I guess as now a property owner in the industrial district, we're in the process of actually negotiating with a potential industrial tenant. And I guess I can say if the easy thing for us to do is probably just to go and secure a long-term industrial lease and kind of collect the rent and maybe reinvest that somewhere else. The harder thing to do is maybe to change the nature of the neighborhood and to do something that the community really needs, and that's kind of what we're interested in doing. And I think there's opportunities to add some value, specifically in like the youth community. And I guess with that in mind, I guess if we do, if we're not able to, I guess, add these recreational uses now, and we do secure long-term tenants that are industrial tenants, they're not going to want like 5-year leases. Or, they might not want 10-year leases. They might want 20-year leases. And so if there's, if the Dale Summit is going to happen, that it seems like something is going to happen in terms of like the change to the nature of the neighborhood. That could potentially preclude that or kind of block that and be impediment to that change, I guess, if these industrial spaces are secured with long-term industrial tenants.
Yeah, as long as you have the podium, any questions on what you just heard?
No, I think I'm glad you have that commitment to the youth community, and I think having those opportunities is important, but I think we also have to consider those safety issues we talked about, and it may be a little bit of a slower process, but I certainly hope you'll collaborate with us on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important work you're doing, so.
Yep.
Anything, Rich? And yeah, I just would echo what Susan said, is that we're moving this forward.
Yep.
But we, as you've heard in the discussion, we have to be respectful of other property owners and other zoning districts who you may be competing with.
Yep.
Existing industrial needs. I will say that it is industrial not just by happenstance, but the rail line in there made all the sense in the world in the 70s when that was designated as the industrial line. And,
Right.
it's actually being used several times a week, freight into Leisure and Center Concrete, which I think is not insignificant. But I think if you just be patient with us, we will keep this process moving. I think it's not unreasonable to ask Pat, to check with Patton Township first. That's really the only thing that I see tonight that would cause any additional delay beyond the timeline that Lindsay outlined. And I think we can still meet that.
Yeah, that's great. I got a great sense of the tone of the discussion tonight. It was great. Just want to make sure we got some
So
additional
at a
perspective.
minimum, you're leaving here tonight knowing that there is consensus support amongst council to move this forward for consideration, and all we've done is identified some areas we'd like to get more information. You addressed one of them. It appears that, at least in your research, there aren't other areas in the center region that are conducive to this type of use, even though it's permitted.
Right.
Unless you were to build a building from scratch. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Okay. We just want to get confirmation on that.
Just
Mike?
one caveat to that, I know that we're not the only ones having this conversation too. So I'm aware that a similar request is in front of Harris Township, and they're starting that discussion now. So there is some momentum afoot within the region, but you know, I think given the trajectory that we're currently on with Dale Summit Area Plan, it merits more conversation.
And you saw it's not inconsistent with what we've got recommendations from already from consultants. So we've got Harris chomping at our heels, so
That's right.
that'll keep this process moving forward.
We'll race them.
I was excited to see the agenda tonight that it didn't die. So thank you for raising it again.
All right. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else then on that subject?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rustin Meyer, and I am the owner and president of the Happy Valley Heat, which is a 501c3 charitable organization here in town that serves about 100 families ages 9 to 16 in the baseball and softball community. The Happy Valley Heat was started to help build state college baseball and softball, to work very closely with the Little League, which Sean is involved with, as well as the Teener League here in town, which services many athletes. As part of this organization, we've been on the lookout for about the last 4 years for an indoor space, and have walked through, I would say, probably a dozen spaces across various townships. And for a variety of reasons, none of those have worked. One of those reasons, of course, being zoning. To speak to your point, I guess 2 points about demand and about the challenges across other zoning regions. The fact of the matter, generally speaking, is that in commercial districts, it's just too expensive to acquire a facility that gives the space, the ceiling heights, the overall square footage necessary to play sports in any sort of large-scale capacity. And then in industrial spaces that we've seen, which are obviously lower cost, then we run into the zoning ordinances that we're discussing here today. The other thing that I would say about the demand is that in the facilities that we've looked at and have tried to acquire, they're usually in the 6,000 to 20,000 square foot range, and are designed to bring in like an individual team for an hour or an hour and a half, which consists of maybe 10 to 12 players. And so every 60 to 90 minutes, there would be 10 vehicles that come in and turn over, and another 10 vehicles that leave. And so the impact on traffic would be quite minimal. We're not looking at large spaces that would bring in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people per hour. And so while I 100% appreciate the view toward safety and other considerations like traffic. I think it's important to understand that in a lot of these models, those impacts would be relatively minimal compared to even other industrial uses. And so oftentimes the use would be a 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. or exclusively on weekends. And so it's a pretty low traffic area or time frame to begin with. Do definitely share the concerns regarding lighting, sidewalks as well. And I definitely appreciate Eric's point about the township taking some leadership on those particular areas as well. So I'm just here to talk about demand, talk about one particular organization of many in town who are looking for space. And much like Sean, the models that we've pursued, we've viewed partially for philosophical reasons and partially for logistical reasons, financial reasons, to be open to everyone. So not just, this would not be a facility that just our organization utilizes and owns, but something that we can lease out to other interested parties, not just in baseball and softball, but other sports as well, including soccer, lacrosse, those sorts of things. So anybody who's looking for a turf space is someone that we're interested in serving and partnering with.
Yeah, thanks. Before you step down, questions?
No, thank you.
Susan? No, that was helpful information. I will offer that we know that one of the reasons the commercial space is more expensive is because the property owner had to invest in many of those infrastructure improvements that they didn't have to do in the industrial zoning district. So that's just a fact, really.
Yep.
So that's why we're trying to strike that balance here. And if we want it bad enough, we might have to be one of those partners in bringing that up.
Understood. I would point out too that if you look at communities similar to State College, so Carlisle, Mechanicsburg, that have facilities like this, they are typically in industrial areas. And so those have been townships and communities that have found that appropriate balance, and we look forward to working with you to strike it as well.
All right, stay tuned. We've definitely got something started.
Thank you.
Mr. Fenton?
Yeah, for the record, frankly, both these guys, I know them as coaches for State College Little League. I don't have any affiliation at all in their organizations. As a member of the PC, we first started talking about DPZ, form-based code. They said we wanted an urban center. And we said, what's an urban center? And then said, we have a town center. So what's a town center? The last meeting, it's a neighborhood center. And I look at this maybe as an opportunity. We've looked at all these nodes. Okay, where are we going to have a town center or neighborhood center? And this might be the one place where we can develop a neighborhood center. I mean, we're just looking at certain things, but maybe there's a YMCA out there. Maybe there's a, we really don't have a place to swim on this side of town. Maybe there's a really, I guess, endless thing, but I think maybe the first couple getting them approved will be tough, but down the road there might be, somebody says, boy, a lot of action going on out there, we need some apartments out there. So I just think we need to look, we sort of form-based, but a lot of it's development, and maybe we need to also look at redevelopment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and you're right, there's our existing residential already adjacent to this site. There's potential residential on the other side and across the street as we look at, so a neighbor, it's certainly not out of the question that could suit well as a neighborhood center. Anybody else? All right. There was a lot of discussion for a non-action item, but I think it was very productive. I appreciate you guys taking the time to participate tonight. And if there is no further discussion, we will conclude OB1, recognizing that there seems to be a consensus amongst the three of us at least to remand to Planning Commission for consideration. However, out of respect for our relationship with Patton, we'd like that to kick off the process.
Yeah, I think just to add kind of put a bow on it, given the time that it'll probably take for us to send the concept to Patton for them to respond. We'll probably be queued up for some discussion early here in September, and potentially, again, if Patton comes back with no legitimate concerns, what that discussion might be is, here's a potential remand letter, what do you think?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes old business. Takes us to new business. Tonight we have 2 items under new business. The first one is NB1, draft revisions to the pollution reduction plan, PRP. This is a discussion and potential action item. And unlike the last meeting, it's after 8 o'clock that we made it to new business, so it mustn't be Jerry, it must be us. I don't know.
Maybe it's Rich. So, at our last meeting, we discussed the MS4 partners, we discussed the stormwater program, we discussed the ordinance. I joked afterwards, I'm used to always having the last word, but when I turn things back to the chair and everybody makes their motions, I don't get the last word. So last meeting, I forgot to thank Sharon Myers for her heavy lift on the ordinance. I'm starting with that so I don't make that mistake twice. Your pollutant reduction plan is a requirement of your stormwater permit. The pollutant reduction plan identifies how much sediment from College Township runs into our waterways, and then what projects can we do to try to eliminate 10% of that sediment that goes to the waterways. You started this process 2015, 2016. You regionally contracted with NTM at that point in time. You produced a model of all the stormwater in the center region, 300 pages of very in-depth information that for 6 to 8 years, it was great for what it said 8 years ago. And now that we're coming down to home stretch, we're gonna kind of tighten this up with how we're actually gonna get across the finish line. So, go ahead, Jen. What the plan says originally, and we are not changing any of your loadings. We're not changing any of the modeling. We're not changing anything else. We're only changing how we're going to cross the finish line. So 77,000 offsets were needed, technically 76,849. This plan detailed how we were going to satisfy that permit requirement. Originally, what was then the Rockenbeck property is now the Clearwater property. That was one of your key components of reaching your goal. The duck pond attributed to doing this. At that point in time, 6 to 8 years ago, nobody had any idea that Trout Unlimited and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would rehabilitate 4,000 feet of stream bank back here. So the key point of this amendment, region-wide, is to get that project into the plan, get DEP's blessing, and then use that to kind of create a shareable fund for anybody who's running late or may not be hitting their targets exactly as planned. And then the last line there, any unused project offsets from any of the regional partners, having those available as a shareable pool. So you can see here in the 2019 plan, Penn State estimated there would be 23,000 offsets available to College Township. 2024, they're now offering 35,435. Some of this plays into, we know what we have to do this 5-year permit cycle. DEP has not told us what we have to do next permit cycle, but they basically said stream bank stabilization may not be eligible. So Penn State sees no need to bank those credits that they were previously considering saving. So now they're distributing more to College Township, distributing more to Ferguson. And then Spring Creek Estates, with the Clearwater purchase of both sides of the Hauserville Bridge, instead of 57,000 offsets being available back there, now that's 70,000 offsets. So that project has greatly expanded its availability to the region. Financially, 2019, we looked at if we built our share of the Duck Pond project, it would cost about $128,000 in capital. Penn State right now, without getting into too many details of that contract and that negotiation, is looking at a deferred process without laying significant dollars out of this current budget. About $1,700 operation and maintenance is what it would have cost us to maintain our section. Penn State is saying that they'll just maintain it, and if there's a major repair, they'll call. But at this point, we don't expect a regular O&M bill from Penn State. Back at Spring Creek Estates, we were looking at about $110,000 if we did that level of work ourselves. Because Trout Unlimited and Fish and Wildlife Service installed it, there was $0 outlaid by the township at that point. And then about $1,500 operation and maintenance was what was originally targeted for that smaller section that we were looking at. Now we have a larger section, and it's about $6,000 a year. That dovetails nicely with Clearwater being there and being able to manage this and setting up a management agreement with them where we help fund maybe some plantings, spraying the invasives, and having a little bit of that O&M our direction. So, go ahead, Jim. The Millbrook Marsh project back here, of the 4,000 feet from College Ave back to the underpass, there is a section, the first 1,500 feet, that is an offset. PennDOT funded it to Trout Unlimited and Fish and Wildlife Service as an offset for the I-99 project out by 80. So that is ineligible for MS4, is the takeaway. Because they damaged a riparian buffer, they have to put one back. So we haven't bettered the environment. It's net neutral. For the other 2,500 linear feet, if we get the full credit of 115 pounds of offsets per foot, that 230,000 pounds of offsets available. Remember, you only need 70,000 as College Township. So that heavy lift of putting that many offsets on the table all of a sudden becomes very helpful to all of the regional partners creating that fund. So getting this to DEP is our goal. We need to get this submitted, get it blessed, and get over the finish line here by June 30th, 2025. What's not on this list that previously was in the PRP, the Penn Hills project. You'll remember that we looked at the outlet structure over at the Penn Hills Basin and encouraging infiltration. We haven't forgotten about that project, but as far as return on investment, it's kind of been deferred. Millbrook would more than help College get across the finish line. The duck pond would significantly help, but Harris may be interested in doing the Penn Hills project for you because they are a little more fluid in how they're going to try to get across the finish line. Their heavy lift projects have not panned out as smoothly as what College Townships have. So that project hasn't been forgotten about, may still happen, and may still happen at no expense to College Township. Calendar-wise, we've begun advertising this pollutant reduction plan August 4th. There is a 30-day public comment period that is running right now. September 10th, 6 p.m. in this room, we will have a public meeting region-wide. All of the regional engineers and MS4 partners will be here to discuss how this works for each of us. Public is welcome. Anyone that makes a comment, pro or anti, or asks questions, they're all documented. We respond with those questions and responses back to DEP so that they see that there's community engagement. So September 10th is kind of a big date to engage if you'd like to engage. And then as of September 5th or 25th, all comments that we've received, all responses we prepared, this package goes to DEP at that point for their review and hopeful their blessing. Closing notes, this township has charged me not only with being your assistant engineer, but with Harris's engineer, and so I wear both hats. And as I said, Harris Township, their big project, their heavy lift was to do a project on the military museum grounds down in Harris Township, and that project has fallen through for various Commonwealth bureaucratic reasons. So they are looking for credits. College is going to be very flexible in where you're getting credits. So you will have the pick of the litter as to what is the most financially effective for you. What reduces your risk, what's financially effective, what's O&M, what's convenient to being right in your backyard. And then you will have available credits to share. So Harris is kind of looking your direction. They may be looking at the Meeks Lane project in Patton, having a little bit of extra project or offsets. Walnut Springs Lane in the borough is now going to expand. Trout Unlimited is going to help them out, so they may have extra offsets. So I don't feel that Harris is in a poor position. I just feel that it's highly fluid because they don't know specifically how they're going to cross the finish line. Penn State feels that they are done. They've done the duck pond project. It's constructed. They've had their DEP walkthrough. So Penn State feels very confident that they have no issues going into the next permit cycle. Ferguson's projects are all under construction, so they also feel very confident. And then the borough and Patton, the projects they had have gotten a little bit bigger, so where they were, you know, kind of cutting it close, now they've got a little bit more slush fund and offsets as well. So College is in good shape, other townships are in good shape. Harris is the fluid municipality moving forward. I'll close with it. DEP has not told us what the next permit looks like, what our requirements are for the next cycle. Developing this pollutant reduction plan was a major expense, a major time consumer to the entire center region. We are not required to replicate this effort going into the 2025 permit cycle. My conversations with DEP are maybe not so much North Central, but statewide. They have a fear of a large failure rate of people not meeting their requirements. So they are focusing on getting people real projects and getting them across the finish line so that DEP and EPA are in lockstep with each other down through the municipal level. So we don't know what the next cycle brings. We don't know if there will be more stream bank stabilization. We don't know if we're going to start looking at basins more specifically. So that's why nobody's banking these credits. They're just looking at for stream bank stabilization. If they have them, use them. So that is the crux of my presentation tonight. The PRP amendment is available for review if anybody needs a copy. I believe it's in your packet. It's also available downstairs to any member of the public. And if you have any questions, I'd like to help answer those.
Very good. This is an action item in the sense that staff is asking for a motion to do basically what you described, start the public engagement process.
Mm-hmm.
But before we consider that, any questions for staff? Rich, anything? No. Susan?
I do have some questions. And they could be questions that I could get answered by coming to see you in your office, and I don't want to keep everybody here, but I did try to do my due diligence, and I'm confused by the terms. You know, what is the definition of an offset? And I was looking at the TSS and trying to figure out the reduction in pounds per year, and I couldn't quite put all the numbers together. So is there a simple explanation? If not, you can defer this to a conversation in your office.
The simplest way to imagine is if water's running off of a parking lot, and as it runs off that parking lot, it's going to pick up some grit, and it's going to pick up some dirt, and it's going to pick up wind-blown dust, and it's going to move towards a stream. And on the edge of that stream, if we have a vegetated plant structure 35 feet wide that has specific plants designed to limit that sediment from going into that stream and uptake the nitrogen and phosphorus that's in that soil that's moving, that's the goal. So an offset is 1 pound of sediment per year prevented from entering that stream.
Okay. That's exactly what I needed to know.
Okay.
And that is the riparian buffer that you're talking about, that 35-foot?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's what I needed to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that it?
It was that simple. I was trying to tackle this whole thing, and I kept thinking, what is an offset? I kept Googling, what is an offset? And there's all kinds of offsets. I just couldn't figure out the calculation for how that fit in with all this. I understand, you know, that the stormwater piece, but...
We used to call them credits, but then we were told that we can't sell credits, and credits are more of a valuable thing. So an offset is eliminating your own. A credit is something that could be parlayed, so.
And it's a way to quantify how much pollution reduction you have actually accomplished with whatever you're doing to mitigate that. Thank you very much.
No, thanks. That was actually a really good explanation. I think anybody could have made sense of it.
Just needed to know the first term, offset.
I have no questions. In fact, I would support, certainly support the motion, the requested motion that's in our packet tonight. If one of my fellow council members would like to put that out on the table.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the College Township Council encourage the general public and concerned organizations to provide additional comments on the amended pollutant reduction plan prior to September 25th, 2024. The public is invited to an information session at 6 p.m. here in the College Township building in council chambers on September 10th, 2024. Council supports our continued path to compliance as presented with submission to DEP for approval thereafter.
So I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? This is an action item, so at this point, before I take a vote, is there anyone here tonight in the audience who would like to address council on the potential action? I'm not seeing any public online, is that correct, Jen?
Right.
Okay. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one is opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Jerry. That was very helpful and informative. That takes us to our second new business item of the evening, NB2, Open Records Policy Revisions, Policy A-004. Only our fourth policy of the year?
Well, we'll talk through it a little bit, but yeah, no, it's not our only one.
That's just the number.
That's just our, yeah.
That's the original number?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so this is a potential action item, but before we consider a motion, Mike, are you going to introduce this for us?
Sure, yeah, I will discuss this item, but I have to tip my cap across the table to Jen. She's helped do a lot of the heavy lifting on this as it pertains to our policy related to the Pennsylvania Right to Know law. So stepping back into...
experience in it?
She does have some experience. Anyone that's been to PSATs can tell you, she has some experience in it. So stepping the Wayback Machine for a minute, going back 22 years, believe it or not, Pennsylvania passed Act 100 of 2002, the Pennsylvania Right to Know law. Shortly thereafter, College Township adopted its open records policy, that was policy A-004, in November of 2002. This ensured compliance with the Act. As you know well in your rules, the open record policy assures that the township provides access to public records. It offers the definition of a public record, the process for request of a public record, and determines who the township's open record officers are, the fees for accessing public documents, as well as the process for appeal. So what brings us here tonight is this policy, while very well intended, has also had opportunities for abuses. And while that may not necessarily be this specific instance, it did raise some questions across the Commonwealth. So many agencies across the state have been receiving multiple requests coming from an individual known as Frank Curry and an organization known as FOIA Buddy. To date, College Township has received, Jen, correct me, 6 individual requests. Those are included with this memo to show you what the requests have been coming in. We have responded appropriately to all of these requests, but have also been monitoring what is happening across the Commonwealth. To date, we have done fairly well in terms of the number of requests. Others have been inundated. Recently, there was the case Curry versus the Southwestern School District. And in this instance, the Office of Open Records denied an appeal by Mr. Curry and FOIA Buddy on the basis that the requests were anonymous and the school district did not have to respond. The Office of Open Records noted that the school district highlighted that FOIA Buddy serves as a proxy function option, promptly notifying the requester of its concerns, and had the policy that anonymous requests will not be fulfilled. Township PSATs has followed this, the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, and have encouraged municipalities across the state to look at their individual policies and ensure that they include language prohibiting anonymous requests and requiring that requests be submitted on the Office of Open Records request form. Again, highlighting those requests that came in from FOIA Buddy. They replicated the form, but it's not the official Open Records form. Staff has taken the time to look at our Open Records policy, and following the guidelines that PSAT has provided, is offering revisions known as Open Records Policy A004 revision number 5. That is attached as NB2B. That would be updating revision number 4, which is attached as C on your within your memo. The action requested tonight is looking for council to move to approve this revision number 5 to our open records policy. With that, I will stop and be happy to answer questions.
Okay, well, let's open it up for questions before we get a motion on the table, just for clarification. Any questions on what's being asked here?
No, I think the only revision I saw was in the paragraph. It's on page 2 of 3, the open records request. There was just one statement added, I think. The last statement, all right to know requests must be from a requester. I mean, I have no problem with that. And I mean, in fact, looking at the requests that are being made across the state, they're asking about IT, and that's a concern. So the sooner we don't answer that, I think probably the better.
I think that one of the things that they're afraid of is with artificial intelligence, we're going to just start getting more and more of these requests.
That's a good
So if we
point.
can back ourselves up, we'll have something in our arsenal to use.
Well, and that would tie you up and keep you in, well, you know.
Yeah.
So I hadn't thought about that, so thanks.
Rich?
No.
All right.
I
then,
appreciate the regular review of these type of policies.
Then it sounds like we're certainly in a position here to entertain a motion, the requested motion, or the requested action in the form of a motion.
Make a motion to approve College Township's open records policy, policy A-004, revision number 5, as presented.
Second?
Okay, any question on the motion? Mike, Susan hinted at it, were the other requests statewide from this person, were they all IT related? Okay.
They were.
There's been some,
bills,
but there's,
everything.
most of them have a flavor of IT.
IT.
So it wasn't just, we were getting the similar requests that everybody else was.
Sure.
Okay.
And, I will note, just before you move to act on the motion, our policy, I think, holds up very well. We appreciate what PSATS has provided, just to tighten it up a little bit. We continue to do our due diligence when we respond to these, but ultimately, it's nice to have that policy to point to when we start getting into this kind of uncharted territory.
I do have a question. So the school district involved in that suit was able to analyze the way the requests came in and determined it was coming from an anonymous site and it was a proxy request. And I guess my question would be, how do we determine when something is anonymous? I mean, they clearly had a sophisticated IT analysis capacity. I don't know if we have that. Is that a Hinton thing? I mean, we've been talking a little bit about this in our comp plan and recognizing that IT security is more of an issue, so.
I think that's an answer I don't have tonight.
Yeah.
It's a discussion probably with someone a little more tech savvy than me. But yeah, Jen, you may have some background on
Well, I
the
just
school
went to a
district.
conference in Erie,
Yeah.
and we had a right to know session. You can, it's gonna have to go by a case by case. From what you looked at, it looked like it was a person, Frank Curry, it's got a name, it's not anonymous, but when you actually Google Frank Curry, which this solicitor that was presenting this thing, she said she went through the motions of looking this person up. There was no Frank Curry anywhere near Ashland, PA. There was a Frank Curry on the other side of the state. He was deceased. Could there be a junior or whatever? But from what it appeared is this was just a made up, character. And so I think every time we get a request that might look a little bit iffy, we can always do a Google search and then just, make a decision whether or not, as Adam's the right to know officer, he can make a decision whether we whether we go for it or we deny it on the means that it's, that's why we get our solicitor involved too. If we have a question, he would definitely be the one to.
Well, and PSATs may start to develop best practices for municipalities dealing with this, because I'm sure the smaller municipalities are dealing with this too, and it's concerning, especially because it's IT requests.
And with the PSATs discussion group, we automatically knew everybody was getting them, because one person we got 5 in one day, and immediately that secretary sent out a note and said, hey, did anybody else get these emails? And then we just got bombarded with, we all got them. So we all pretty much got them on the same day. And so we knew something was up, and that was great that this school district took it one step further and went to the next step and got a good ruling in our favor.
So even with the policy change, there'll still be some subjective calls made.
But this gives you the policy backup to deny those requests, so that if you do run into somebody with a legitimate request, we can say we followed the policy and then revisit their request.
As, you know, as tactics and approaches evolve, I wouldn't be surprised if we're not back in another, you know, amount of time talking to you about revision number 6 to address, you know, a new approach.
Fair enough.
Right. You know, end of the day, we are happy to honor legitimate requests, but these kind of things become nuisance requests, which are abuses of, you know, a well-intended law.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Policy revised. That concludes new business, takes us to staff informatives. We have a list of action, typical report in our packet. Anything staff wants to add to that? Any questions from council on what was given to us? Then that concludes staff informatives, takes us to council, staff, and other.
Just on the staff informatives, just to draw attention to the residents that the Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority are considering some new rules and regulations which haven't been updated since, don't have been updated since 2008. And they're going to be discussing those at their August 26th meeting.
Okay, that would be a week from Monday? 2 weeks from Monday? A week? No.
1 week, I think.
It's the 16th, 10 days.
10 days out.
Week from Monday, okay. All right, then that then concludes staff informatives. Council, staff, other matters. Mike?
3 really quick things for you. One, you may have noticed on your walk-in this evening that we have 3 trash carts sitting out in front. Those are there for display. The display isn't official yet, but these are what Bergmeyer, the incoming trash contract, will be putting out there in terms of your options that are available to residents in terms of their cart selection. So those are the 3 sizes that have been proposed. So that's what's out there in front of the building. So we encourage residents that have any questions about choosing what is appropriate for them to come and take a look at those. You know, that information's starting to get pushed out in the press, and you're starting to open the window to be able to make those selections. So they wanted to have something out there physical that folks could come and see a display. The other 2, obviously in the next week, it's going to get busy around here as Penn State starts to move back in. So just be mindful of a lot more traffic and a lot more pedestrian movement. And I would be remiss to also not flag August 27th is the first day of school for State College Area School District. So we just remind our residents to be safe out there. Be mindful of a lot of school kids out and about, and also adhere to the traffic laws as it pertains to school buses. That's what I have for tonight.
On Bergmeyer, you said proposed. Those are actually the 3 choices.
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry. Proposed for choice. Those are the ones that are, those are your options.
And one last thing on that, is there a single point where a resident can go for more information, maybe like on a COG website or something?
What we haven't gotten yet is the official like flyers that have QR codes that folks can scan in and go directly to a one-point source. Anyone with questions can always reach out to Shelley Nato at Center Region Refuse and Recycling. She'd be able to provide you some guidance.
All right, because I'm starting to get questions, and I've been telling people that at some point there'll be specific information posted as to.
I think we got a press release today that's going to be going out about all those things, right?
We have one that's posted out here on the bulletin boards. I know there's more of a formal blitz coming, but that information's starting to gravitate out to folks.
And one of the questions I had, I don't know if we know this yet, what do we do with our existing carts?
One of the items that I think is being discussed in the upcoming COG program is a effort for recycling of existing trash containers. So yet to be determined, but I think it's coming soon.
I remember when we talked about this at COG, that was put off for the education plan. So,
And for the record, do we have the capacity of those cans listed in gallons for those who don't want to come in and just want to compare that to the size, gallon size?
what they might already have.
We are anticipating a little bit more of a formal display right now. I believe they are in 30-gallon increments, so 35, 65, and 95.
If you don't register, you'll get 95 as the default. I'm just reading the press release.
And obviously, there's a price difference, right?
Yep.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about $2.
$2 or something like that.
$2 each one is $2, or two from the smallest to the,
I think the gap between each goes up to $2 increments, $2 to $3, whatever it is.
all right. Any other matters outside of staff, council members, anything? Any other staff? You want to move to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned.